Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. Today's video is a follow-up to my previous video where I did a retrospective of 2021 and talked about what's coming for 2022. In that video, I talked that I got some health issues and that I was getting monitored for it. Now, I'm ready to talk about it. As you may have guessed with the title, I want to talk about my issues regarding cardiac laminopathies. Since it's somewhat a rare condition, I also wanted to make a video to bring more awareness about it. That being said, you can also probably guess why I'm drawing a beaten up art as a backdrop for this video. Before we jump into the subject, just a quick reminder to like, subscribe, and look in the description for my Instagram page if you want to see more pictures of my art. Also, a big disclaimer before we start. I am not a healthcare professional or a medical expert of any kind. I try to research the topic and explain it the best I can, but I may be wrong on some aspect and take what I say with a grain of salt. This video will mostly be split into 3 parts. Why I was identified at risk for cardiac laminopathies, what are cardiac laminopathies, and what was my diagnostic and how it affects me moving forward. That being said, let's jump into the subject. Why was I identified at risk for cardiac laminopathies? We always knew that there was something going on in the family. My grandmother had a pacemaker and all of her children got one too, generally after 4 years old. Basically, a pacemaker is a small device placed under the skin, connected to the heart to help to regulate heartbeats. But when looking at my generation, like my siblings and my cousins, a lot of them don't have heart problems. Some are way past 40 years old and have no heart problems. We thought that there was an hereditary disease, but we were not sure and we had no clue on what it was, like what was the disease's name. For me, it all started in spring 2021 with my brother. My brother already had heart issues and already got a pacemaker. He met a new cardiologist who knew the rest of my family by name and who is specialized in genetic heart conditions. He said that since my grandparents on both sides were from the same region, which is known to have a particular gene mutation running in many families, there is chances that his heart problem could be caused by that gene mutation. Now, there is a genetic test available locally to verify it. My brother did the genetic test and it confirmed that he had the genetic mutation. We then learned that our family's disease was caused by a mutation on the LMNA gene and that the disease is called a cardiac laminopathy. Afterwards, my brother was asked to tell his siblings to also get tested for the gene mutation. One of my sisters passed the test and learned that she doesn't have the gene mutation. I did the test and received the results in mid-December 2021. I learned that I do have the gene mutation on the LMNA gene. They told me that I would be contacted in January 2022 to go to the cardiology department and do tests to assess my heart condition. So now let's talk about cardiac laminopathies. Reminder that I'm not a cardiologist, neither a healthcare professional. I try to explain everything the best I can, but I may be wrong on some things. It's hard to find comprehensible documentation since most of what I find about the disease is scientific papers which are not aimed for the general public. First, the disease is quite new. It only really got a name in the early 2000s. Basically, lamins are a type of protein based on the LMNA and LMNB genes. The name lamin comes from the name of the gene they come from, LMNA. L-A-M-N, lamin, that's where the name comes from. Lamins help to regulate cell maintenance, especially the membrane of the cell or the membrane of the core of the cell. A mutation in one of the LMN gene means that the lamins won't do their job the right way. See it like the genes are a cookbook and there's a mistake in the recipe to make lamins, so the lamins that are produced are faulty and won't work properly. The main effect is that some cell may burst or die prematurely, especially in the heart. On a larger scale, upon many years, it can change the structure of the heart. It mostly creates some fibrous tissues, some kind of scar tissues, that will affect the ability of the heart to work properly. Keep in mind that laminopathies are a big family of diseases. Most are metabolic diseases. Some may cause premature aging, some may be linked to diabetes. In my case, this particular mutation of the LMNA gene seemed to affect mostly, if not only, the heart. There is two main ways it may affect the heart. The first one is that it may affect how the electric signals from the nerves travel through the heart. It may not travel through the two halves of the heart at the same speed, leading the two halves to beat out of sync, leading to arrhythmias. It may create a feedback loop where the signal is repeated, making the heart beat way more than normal, which is called tachycardia. It may make the signal becoming weaker and the heart beats slower, which is called bradycardia. It can be to the point some or all parts of the heart don't receive the signal to tell it to beat, leading the heart just to stop beating. The main remedy for those issues is the installation of a pacemaker to regulate the way the heart beats. Sometime, a pacemaker with defibrillator may be needed. The second one that it may cause is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Over a long period, the fibrous tissue may increase the thickness and stiffness of the heart muscle and the heart walls. The heart will grow outward, but inward as well, meaning there will be less room inside the heart to receive and pump blood. It's like having an engine, doubling the thickness of all the metal sides while making it look like the same size from the outside, so it pumps a lesser volume of gas. This may lead to cardiac insufficiency. This can be managed up to a certain point. If there is thickening around the exit of the heart toward the aorta, it can create a bottleneck. They may do surgery to remove excess tissue around that spot. But for the excess tissues elsewhere in the heart, surgery cannot be done at that scale. Sometimes the only solution is a heart transplant. Hypertrophic cardiomyopathies is not only related to laminopathies and is more common. The ratio in the general population is supposed to be around 1 for every 500 people, but it mostly comes from genetic disorders. Eventually, all of this can lead to sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome is when the signal is too weak and the heart just stopped to beat. All members of my family that died did because of sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. In my family, it all happened during their sleep. The only way to survive sudden arrhythmic death syndrome that I know about is having a pacemaker with defibrillator. My mother had a pacemaker but didn't have a defibrillator. She passed away in her sleep because of sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. It is believed to be caused by arrhythmia and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, compared, let's say, to have a stroke or a heart attack, doesn't have any warning sign beforehand. It doesn't come like with a sudden chest pain or anything. That's why they call it sudden death syndrome, because of his lack of symptom beforehand. People with cardiac laminopathy can get a life expectancy comparable to the average population if monitored correctly. Based on the gene mutation alone, most of the time there is no way to predict the severity of the disease. Laminopathies are quite rare, around 1 case per 100,000 person, mostly because the only way to properly diagnose it is with a gene test, and the gene test is generally done only where there's suspicion of the disease based on family history. The real number of cases may actually be higher, but if there's no gene test done, medical professionals just assume it's an arrhythmia problem or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with no apparent root cause. Then, where am I in the middle of all of this? In late January, I went to the hospital and underwent 4 cardiology tests. The first one was an electrocardiogram, a test where they monitor the electricity in your body with around 15 sensors placed all over your body. The test is pretty short and lasts less than a minute. Then I had to do a treadmill test. Still with around 8 sensors on the chest, you run on a treadmill that goes faster and steeper to monitor your heart and your blood pressure. It's the only test that is unpleasant or bothering, since you run until you get out of breath while also having your blood pressure taken while running. Then I got an echography of the heart. Basically, it's like what they do to see the baby of a pregnant woman, but this time is to see and hear your heart. It is the main way to verify if you're developing hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Then I had to do a Holter. With around 8 sensors on the chest, they monitor your heartbeat for 24 hours. They are recorded on a small device that you carry during that time. They monitor your heartbeat during the day and during your sleep. In fact, I already did those tests when I first met my personal doctor, just to verify my heart based on my family history. At the time, many years ago, everything was fine, but my slowest heartbeat during my sleep was really low. I redid all of those tests, now knowing that I do have the faulty gene and that I may be at risk of bradycardia based on the previous tests. The main issue for me was to get surgery to get a pacemaker installed. It was a very probable outcome and it was making me super anxious. So I waited a month and a half to get the results. After the first 2 weeks, I had the suspicion that if I had a serious problem, they would have contacted me already. In the end, there is no sign of the disease on any of the tests, including the one monitoring my heartbeat during my sleep. The result can mean 2 things. I don't have the disease, or I don't have the disease yet. There's no way to know what will be the outcome. Later on, I had a discussion with my doctor, and she told me a very important detail that I wish I would have known earlier. I have a heterozygous gene mutation. Basically, we have 2 copies of each gene. An heterozygous mutation means only one copy is mutant while the other is healthy. The outcome is different for each genetic disease. With some, you need to have the mutation on both genes to have the disease. They are recessive gene diseases. With others, you need to have the mutation on only one of the 2 genes to develop the disease. They are dominant gene diseases. In the case of laminopathy and in the case of my mutation on the LMNA gene, like with many other diseases, it depends on gene expression. The body can use only one gene or can use both at different degrees. That's why it's not possible to predict the outcome. That being said, what about the future? Right now, knowing that I don't have any sign of the disease is a huge relief. I will still be monitored by that cardiologist. Probably I will have to go through the whole set of tests, one per 2 or 5 years. I will probably need to do the Holter every year as well. I changed some of my health habit and it motivates me to continue. I know it won't change my genetics, but some researches suggest that some factors may affect gene expression. That field of research is called epigenetics. Epigenetics is a relatively new aspect of genetics where they study what affects gene expression. Like in my case, having one healthy copy of the gene and one faulty, epigenetics try to study which factor make the body use the healthy gene more often than the faulty one. If your genes would be like recipes you could find on the internet, epigenetics would be like the search engine you use to look for them. Some search engine may prioritize better recipe at the top of the result, while other may put the bad one on the top. Right now, one of the main factors of epigenetics seems to be your diet. In my case, with a heterozygous mutation, a healthier diet may help to slow down the effect of the disease or to compensate for it. I eat healthier, mostly eating more raw fruit and vegetables. I go to the gym 5 days a week and I try to have a full 8 hours of sleep. This all requires time that I don't have to spend on other things, like making art and videos. This is the main reason why I don't make content as much as before. Having healthier life habit may not change anything at the end, but I have nothing to lose to do it. We are now reaching the end of the video. I know this video is more personal and less educational like the tutorials that I usually do, but I wanted to make it anyway. I just needed to get it off my chest. If I ever disappear suddenly with no warning signs, you would now know the first thing to suspect. I hope you really enjoyed the video. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe to see more speed drawing talks like this or to see some of my art tutorials. I hope to see you in another video. Bye!